Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, this Halloween we get another survival event. This is the first survival of the Mythic era, and it comes with significant changes. As usual, I'm going to talk you through things and give you some recommendations and insight to succeed. As usual, a quick shout out to FMG who has been invaluable in putting this together. His referral code is on screen as a thank you. The protagonist for this event is Baraqiel, the Deathwing Terminator of the Dark Angels faction. The event starts on October 26th and runs for a week until November 1st. You start with 2 tokens, and the token refresh rate is 12 hours. Therefore, over the 7 days, you will have 15 tokens as a free-to-play player. You will face the combined forces of the Tyranids and Genestealer cults, and you can bring along any loyalist Space Marines as allies. For this survival, the reward character in the chests is different to the protagonist. That is to say, although we get to play with Baraqiel, fitting the Space Hulk theme, the chest contains his more popular cousin, Forecast. As with the previous survival events, there are a string of missions to complete that will give Baraqiel a bonus 140% health and damage at full completion. I'm scrolling through the enemies and power-ups here, but don't worry if you can't catch it all. I'll have a summary slide later on. We have seen all of these units before, but for the sake of newer players I have provided a brief description of each. Generally speaking, the units on the right are going to ruin your day, but Termagants can be deceptively powerful in numbers. The Genestealer cult units are notable for their ambush mechanic, which means that after you kill them for the first time, you have to step on the decoy or they will come back next round. I'll point out that you only need to kill ambush units once to trigger the end of wave rewards or rarity progression. If multiple Genestealer cult units with the ambush trait are killed, then the resurrection order is characters, followed by the units in the order in which they were killed. You can use that knowledge to make sure you deal with the most difficult units just once. This time around we will see no Genestealer cult characters nor the Neurothrope, but the difficulty is more than compensated by the toughness of the 4 mythic waves. In case you didn't catch everything as I was scrolling through it, here is a summary slide of all the enemies and power-ups, sorted by level and rarity. There are 2 key waves to defeat in the new survival structure. Defeating the enemies of Wave 11 continues to provide 3 legendary experience books. On screen here are the stats for the enemies on that wave. With the rescaling and restructuring around Mythic, we also get rewards for defeating Wave 13. We get a Mythic book here, and once more the stats are pictured for the enemies you have to defeat. Finally, Wave 18 has 4 Tyranid warriors and 8 Barb Gods. Even though there's quite a big buffer of 8 turns between the last 2 waves, I don't expect most of the player base to even see the last wave, much less survive to actually attack them. Although defeating the waves can become tedious, it's worth noting that Snowprint are running a home screen event alongside this survival. Against the Tide is a home screen event that rewards you for defeating waves of enemies, and the rewards are shown here on screen. This is the map that we play on for this survival. The map is the smallest we've ever had, and it is also the flattest. There are only 2 high ground spots, and one of them is on a spawn point. There are also relatively few map features, with only 4 hexes of barbed wire and 3 hexes of impassable terrain that are not adjacent to the walls. Enemies enter from the spawn points marked with the yellow hexagons. The icons in red in the middle represent your starting position for your characters. This time around I have not made the height map because it doesn't really seem necessary. Next, on this version of the map, I have annotated where the power-ups tend to appear. The map is both a blessing and a curse. It is so small that you can traverse it in a couple of turns, and you can get to most of the power-ups pretty easily. The only hard to access part for non-flyers is the top right corner, where the high ground hex is, and the barbed wire and impassable hexes make for natural choke points on the north of the map. The downside to the map is that there is nowhere to hide, and there are no safe spots from barb gods as they spawn. Before we get into the characters you can choose, let's talk a little bit about the protagonist. Baraqiel is reasonably tanky stat-wise. His Terminator armor doesn't help that much in an environment where you are always outnumbered, but his passive has the opposite effect, effectively making him more tanky with each blocked hit. With a 40% block chance, it triggers pretty often. His active is a great way to gain some reach and clear enemies far away. Remember that he gains extra damage from both his normal attack and his active if he doesn't move, due to the crushing strike and heavy weapon traits. Once you get the missions going, Baraqiel is not going to have any problem one-shotting most things on the normal waves. When it comes to the tier list, there is nuance to the recommendations. there are several categories of players when it comes to survival. First, we have players that just want to be able to get the books. Then we have the players that want to try and clear as many waves as possible, but don't necessarily want to try out of the box strategies to beat the last wave. Then we have the very, very few that actually make a dent or even clear the last wave. In this tier list, I'm mainly catering to the first two groups of players, trying to get you books and helping you get far in the event. I'm not going to talk about niche strategies that involve turtling and whittling down the final wave. As a reminder, the traits that make a character good and survivable are repeatable summons, being able to kill more than one enemy per turn, and being very resilient or having self-healing. Now, the tier list and recommendations. In the greater good category, we have Jaeger, Burchard, and Bellator. Bellator is an all-star as always. Gravis armor makes him very tanky, and with 6 hits, he's really good at carrying the damage power up. Flying and high mobility means you can have him exactly where you need him, and he makes the best summons for this event. Try and summon your Inceptors at the start of each new rarity, because they don't scale up with your units as the rarities progress. I'm much higher on Brother Jaeger than normal. A lot of the waves have exclusively melee enemies, and Jaeger with a hit power up standing alone in the north or south can clear all of them on his own. This is doubly true for the dangerous Gene Stealers who you have to clear twice. In fact, one of the most viable strategies I have found to go deep into the Mythic wave is to load power-ups onto Jaeger and make him a melee killing monster. If you can get to the point where he can one-shot Gene Stealers with his passive, then he's going to do really well for you. Remember that ability damage does not benefit from the damage power-up, which only affects normal attacks and not ability damage. Burchard is tanky and can eliminate decoys and several squishy but deadly enemies per turn while being very resilient. His only downside, his low mobility, is less apparent due to the very small map. In the good tier we have Forecast, Matineo, Mephiston, and the healers. Forecast can clear several enemies per turn and thrives on being surrounded, so he is great in this type of event. His main weakness here is the Gene Stealers due to their Infiltrate trait. Remember that you can change stance with Forecast to get his area of effect attack to clear decoys if needed. As mentioned before, the damage power-up does work for Forecast since his Overwatch is based on his damage stat. The repeatable summons from Matineo serve as great meat shields as the enemies tend to focus on your summons. He greatly helps your survivability if his passive is leveled enough. Mephiston has the potential to clear 4 enemies per turn, 2 with his passive and another 2 with a ranged attack and smite. He's also another character that's really good to put the damage power-up on. Remember, however, that there are a finite number of power-ups, so you need to choose which character is going to get which power-up. The healers, Nicodemus and Incissus, are more a necessary evil than something to be excited about. They do not have the stats to do much work on their own, but they keep your units alive, and in a game mode like this, that is invaluable. In the average tier, I have put Titus. Titus is probably at his best here given that we have a protagonist with a repeatable active that will continue to grow Titus's damage output. Also, you will not lack melee opponents around you for Titus's final vengeance, which can hopefully trigger his revive mechanic. It still doesn't make him an overall great choice since he can't kill more than 1 enemy per turn, and once things get really tough in the higher stages, a single revive won't be able to save him. I've put Calgar a little lower than I usually would. Although he's probably one of the tankiest units at your disposal, his damage buff isn't really necessary against most of our enemies here. His active is great to clear chaff and decoys, but it's not going to get you very far in the toughest stages of this event. He is still good, but I'm not as high on him as I have been in the past. Godswill and Lucian are also here by virtue of being able to kill 2 units per turn without too much difficulty, but they're nothing to write home about. Sarkoel can do the same with the help of Baraqiel, but it's harder to set up for a small payoff, so he's inching towards bad. Dante gets to be average just because he helps Jaeger kill with his passive before he gets his hits power up, while helping Bellator and Bellator's Inceptors with their poor damage stat, all the while being slightly more resilient due to his terrifying trait. I'm not spending a huge amount of time on the other characters here. The drop off between the good characters and the average ones is quite large, and I think, if possible, you should try and stick to the characters already discussed. That's it for this overview. Thanks as always to my Patreons for their support, and best of luck in this event. Bye for now.